Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle, host also of RT's talk show Crosstalk. Peter, there was an article in the Washington Post the other day about a person that we haven't talked about very much for a while. The headline of this article was "Samantha Power has long championed humanitarian intervention. Ethiopia's crisis is putting her to the test." Now, the interesting thing is, first of all, Samantha Power is a famous person. I mean, she became very famous, identified with humanitarian intervention. She wrote this terrible book, but it was an award-winning book, won prizes, wonderful reviews everywhere, all about humanitarian intervention, the terrible people around the world committing genocide, and only we, the humanitarian Americans and Westerners, can come in and rescue people from genocide. Of course, she was, of course, highly selective in which genocide. So yes, room for the Serbs in Bosnia, room for the Khmer Rouge, room for the Hutus in Rwanda, no room for, let's say, Americans in Central America, the wars that were waged throughout the 1980s, no room for what Americans were themselves doing in Cambodia, before the Khmer Rouge. So, it was a very convenient, of course, nothing really about what America did in Indochina for better part of 2 decades. So again, all that disappears. So it was just very, very carefully selected which genocides she wants to focus on. The book was called Problem from Hell, and she became famous. And Obama appointed her. Exactly. She was first the genocide czar. How will we cope? How with mass atrocities? How do we get the U.S. government involved in averting and stopping and defeating mass atrocities? So she was first had that job, and then when Obama took Susan Rice from the United Nations, brought her into the White House as his national security advisor, Obama appointed Samantha Power as his UN ambassador. She didn't do a particularly good job. In the end, she's most famous for the mass unmasking that she engaged in during the latter days of
still rewarded.
Yes, which she denied, said that somebody was doing it in my name, which of course raised even more questions than if it had been under her own name. But anyway, she's now back in the Biden administration, but in a lesser role. She's head of the USAID, Agency for International Development, disperses a lot of money. So although it's not a cabinet level position as the UN ambassador is, nonetheless, she has a lot of money at her disposal. So she's a powerful person. Now, Ethiopia is an issue that's sort of been bubbling under the surface. We haven't really paid much attention to it, but the media, the media have, pushed on by the Human Rights Brigade in organizations like the International Crisis Group, funded by George Soros, various NATO governments, and they keep banging the drum about Ethiopia, the horrors of Ethiopia. Now, Peter, as we were saying, neither of us is, by any stretch of the imagination, as an expert on Ethiopia. It's a complex war, but it is clear that the media are playing it as they're marking out who are the good guys and who are the bad guys. So the bad guy is the leader of Ethiopia, Abiy Ahmed, and then the good guys seem to be the Tigray forces. So therefore, any attempt to intervene would clearly be in order to affect regime change in Addis Ababa. If only we can get Ahmed out, everything will be okay, because he's obviously the bad guy. Incidentally, he won a Nobel Peace Prize in 2019. So how the world changes, we have the same thing in Myanmar as well. A Nobel laureate suddenly becomes the bad guy. But nonetheless, the issue here is that there is clearly an attempt to get a humanitarian intervention going. I mean, Democrats just love this. We had this obviously under Bill Clinton with Yugoslavia. We had this under Obama, was Libya and then Syria. Haven't had very much of this Biden. And the conventional wisdom is, oh, he's not interested in all this. He's got his eye on the big picture, geopolitics or whatever. I'm not convinced. I think there's such an intense feeling among the sort of Democrat foreign policy types about humanitarian intervention that there's going to be a kind of a steady pressure for some form of humanitarian intervention. I'm not saying it's going to materialize, but there will be pressure for it. And I think that this article, big article in the Washington Post, is part of this drumbeat. Peter, what's your take?
Well, I don't think it was written in the article, but the subtitle should be "Something must be done." Yes. That's what we keep hearing over and over. And when things are done, when does it work out?
No, never.
Okay. And picking, who these are the good guys, these are the bad guys. Who's to say?
Right.
Who's to say who's good and who's bad?
Right.
I would default both are. Okay. Right. And why should we get involved in it all? Okay. What? Because I think we'll make it worse. Okay. So. And that's what happens. You make it worse. Okay. And also, let's make it clear, everybody, the whole thesis, and it's been put under the rubric of right to protect. That has nothing to do with international law. Nothing. As a matter of fact, it is a pretext to subvert international law. Mm-hmm. And she is one of the authors of this. Right. And so, it sounds really nice, but it is very insidious, okay? Because again, time and again, we see rules-based order. That is not grounded in international law, all right? And so we have an epistemological issue that you see it in domestic politics and you see it on the international stage, is that, these words mean what we say they mean. Well, no, they don't mean anything, okay? Except for you decide who are the winners and who are the losers. You decide who gets to live and die. Why? Right. And particularly, if you'd had a road record where it actually worked, once even, you might say, well, but it hasn't.
Right. Well, I think
Samantha Power, mind your own business.
That's the whole point, that when you have these kind of humanitarian intervention brigade, they step into a complex crisis. They tell us who the good guys and the bad guys are. They provide no context whatsoever. They don't tell us about how did this conflict start, what are the historical issues that are at stake. Instead, they just always start at a particular moment, so that in order to get their narrative. So whenever we remember in Bosnia as well, oh, Srebrenica, siege of Sarajevo, but well, how about, let's say, how did this start? How did this war in Bosnia just start? That's an important issue if we're going to decide who the good guys and who the bad guys are. They don't want to do that. They always want to limit the issue. So here, they say already we're having this in Ethiopia. Oh, it's all the the government in Addis Ababa. They launched this war of genocide, war of aggression against the Tigray people. Well, the Tigray people had been the dominant force in Ethiopian politics for more than 20 years. They're obviously not very popular in Ethiopia. The rest of it, they're a tiny minority, and they've been dominating Ethiopian politics for several decades. They're not much loved in it. So I'm not saying they're the bad guys, but the point is that they're being very selective in how they intervene. And that's why this whole right to protect is so absurd, because it's always, in this very arbitrary way, they decide, this is the good guys, these are the bad guys, and the world, the international community is supposed to agree. Well, they don't agree. They don't agree because they just don't think, hey, I don't think you're interpreting these historical events correctly.
Well, it just said it, the international community. Well, in the Beltway, that means the US and its NATO allies and a few other countries, okay? Yes. They are the international community. Yes. With this crisis in Ethiopia that has been going on for a long time, there is a forum for it. It's called the United Nations, right. Okay? And go there. And that's why we have the Security Council, and that's why we have the veto. You have to be sure what you want to do. That's where you're supposed to air these issues and maybe decide on action forward. But Samantha Power has a tiny, tiny little brain, and she's not even a very good writer. And
No.
she has a road record of just utter failure. I mean, I remember her, yelling and screaming like a chicken in a chicken coop during the August crisis in Georgia. Okay, I mean, it was just something extraordinary, not making any sense at all, just appealing to your emotion. Well, emotions are all nice and fine when you're on TV, but what about international law?
Right, right. No, yeah, exactly. We were talking a moment ago. The Australian that whose name we were trying to remember was Gareth Evans. He's the one who kind of created this whole doctrine of the right to protect. It came just after the disastrous Kosovo intervention in 1999, and thought, hey, this might be the model for future interventions. But of course, again, there was no agreement in the international community about the rights and wrongs of the conflict in Kosovo. So the premise of Evans and Power and the people who champion this, that somehow, well, the international community can just simply agree. Well, as long as you define the international community as the United States, United Kingdom, France, and NATO, then yeah, they can probably agree. But too bad, that's not the entirety of the international community, so they don't agree.
Well, they don't want to use the word because it's not popular. It's called neocolonialism. Right. What this is, okay? Right. We do it because we can, and no one can stop us. Right. This is what this doctrine is all about. Right. And again, I reiterate, it has give me a list of situations, interventions that worked out.
No, none of them did. That's right. And that was interesting because the people like Gareth Evans and Samantha Power said, because they realized you've got a problem. We don't have universal agreement, which you have to have. If you're going to play the right to protect humanitarian intervention card, there has to be a universal agreement that this is the wrong, these are the bad guys, this is the way to address the problem using force. Everyone has to be in agreement. So they said, okay, well, why don't we, tell the UN security permanent members not to use their veto when these mass atrocities issues come up. Well, there were very few buyers for this doctrine, but people like Evans were really seriously putting this forward, that the permanent members of the Security Council just should put their veto in abeyance, because these issues are so horrific, so terrible, that silly things like vetoes, there's no room, no time for anything like that. Well, I mean, it's totally absurd.
Yeah. Let's just suspend international law, okay? Just for this one, okay? No, that's not how it works, folks, okay? Everyone is a stakeholder if you observe international law. That by definition, everyone is a stakeholder. But right to protect these interventionists, no one is a stakeholder except for those that have the biggest stake.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So, and that's what happened in the case of Libya. For some mysterious reason, baffling reason, Russia did not use its veto. I think it put an end to Medvedev's kind of future presidential ambitions that he didn't. And look at what an absolute disaster it was. And the architects were Power, Rice, and of course Hillary Clinton. That they were the architects of this ridiculous caper in Libya, and they explicitly invoked right to protect for the Libyan,
which doesn't exist in international law.
Of course it doesn't.
But of course, the New York Times and the Washington Post go, we looked it up. We'll find the citation somewhere. Okay. Oh, it's in her book.
Yeah.
Utterly absurd.
Right. That's it. It doesn't exist because ultimately international law is either you respect national sovereignty, which means that you can't launch any aggressive act against a member state of the United Nations, with the one exception, if the UN Security Council is in agreement. Well, if you don't have that and you're launching an aggression, then you don't have any leg to stand on. So So it was always absurd. But they felt that, hey, we're going to win this. And once we win this, afterwards, everyone will say, hey, who cares about anything? And which is when Hillary Clinton, you remember her famous cackle when she was told that Gaddafi had been brutally murdered. They thought, that's it. It's over. Now it's over. We will go on to the next thing, and yet another great triumph for Western interventionism. So this is the result. I just find that given the Libya disaster, given the Syria disaster, remember during the whole Syria, we must intervene in Syria. It was Power who was at the United Nations constantly, with the drumbeat. Oh, we're going to do something about Syria. Go to Syria. What an absolute disaster these people have wrought. And now she's back, Washington Post, writing these slobbering articles.
Slobbering is the word, as the operative word. The flip side to what Power and her ilk are supporting is the opposite is the United Nations Charter. So let's go back to September 2015. What are the Russians doing in Syria? Well, they were invited there by the sovereign government.
That's right.
Okay. I mean, but that never gets into the introduction of or title of any of these stories here. They give the impression that Russia is an unwanted occupier or something like that, which is not true whatsoever. And even during the time of the Soviet Union had very good relations with the government in Damascus, and that has continued to the present. Yep. So, just like you said, when you put a backstory in there, it looks a little bit different now, doesn't it? Right. And of course, the people like Power, they are completely ahistorical because it serves their purposes. Right. Right. Oh, it doesn't matter what happened before. Okay. That's yes, right. It does matter.
Of course it does. So that's right. So, look, you go to people, most people have no idea about Ethiopia. They don't know where it is on the map. They really, literally, other than, Ethiopia produces good long distance runners. They know absolutely nothing about Ethiopia. So you tell them, well, this is the bad guy. These are the good guys. And there is genocide going on. Boom! I mean, that's it. Oh yeah. Well, let's do it. I mean, and are there going to be any costs to Americans? No cost to America. No. It'll pay for itself. There'll be no casualties. Don't worry about anything.
Walk in the park.
Walk in the exactly. That's right. A cakewalk. Iraq, the cakewalk.
Yeah. What is Black Lives Matter position on this, George? Okay, black people killing black people. So people like Samantha Power should get in the fray. This Black Lives Matter thing, but let's go bomb some black people.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. But I think that, if it is, I think as is likely, which is the Biden administration will lose control of either the House or the Senate or both in the midterms, which means domestic policy gone. They're going to have to do something on foreign policy. The problem with geopolitics is you don't get any spectacular victories with geopolitics, whereas humanitarian intervention, you get a few spectacular things, hey, a little bit of bombing, the bad guy has been chased out of Addis Ababa, 2 thumbs up, big win, Biden, is shown to be a great leader. So at least there's a possibility of victories. I'm not saying that Biden's going to do it. Biden may, demented though he is, he may have some common sense to avoid something like this. But it's a possibility that this could happen.
Let's put it into perspective, folks. You had James Jeffries, a special envoy to Syria under Donald Trump, and he joyfully, jokingly, was happy to tell the public he lied to the president of the United States repeatedly about the number of American troops in Syria. This is this bipartisan foreign policy consensus here. I mean, who cares what Joe thinks? Okay, we have to do it to cleanse our souls.
That's it.
We must bomb people to bring peace.
That's it.
The subtitle of your book.
It's the title of my book. Yeah, exactly. That's it. It's going to be bomb, so we feel good about ourselves, and we show ourselves to be tough guys. Hey, I'm no wimp. Handing out toilet paper and to natives. I'm tough, muscular kind of person. They love it. Both on the side of the angels and showing what a tough guys we are. That's what they love.
This interventionist ideology, paradigm, whatever you want to call it, it has a underlining white man's burden attached
absolutely.
to it. It really does. It really does.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's always, you dress it up differently, but yeah, we have to go to these benighted savages who don't have our sophisticated understanding of civilization and law and how to treat women and how to treat gay people and whatever. So we have to bring it to them, and if they don't like it, we have to use a little bit of muscle. Absolutely.
Yeah,
colonial.
A little bit of muscle against those red states in America too.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, that's the next part, which is humanitarian intervention in the United States. It's
you heard it here. You heard it here first.
That's right.
It's no joke.
No joke.
No joke.
Yeah. I mean, these are benighted people. They're too stupid to know what's in their own good. So, if people are too stupid to know what's good for them, it's up to us enlightened people to bring it to them and use muscle if we have to.
And the arms producers, well, they're just a derivative beneficiary. Love the war machine.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot of the U.S. economy has been powered by the military for a long time, and that engine is what keeps the U.S. economy purring.
You got to keep it purring and got to feed it. Okay. All right, everybody, we're on Locals, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. George and I are doing a series of one-on-one Zoom interviews with gagglers and our followers. The store is up. There's some good buddy stuff there. We've already done a couple of Q&As this week. We're going to do another one because the questions are so interesting. George has already done a live stream. I'm going to follow suit soon, and we're going to do a super chat on YouTube this week. We're going to
this week, exactly. We've got to just fix up the right time and date, and then we'll do it. Yeah.
And
there's that tip jar, which Buddy has been grumbling about for a while, understandably. It's a little empty, so it needs to be refilled. So anything you can do to help Buddy feel better about himself and be a little more full of life and vim, it would be most appreciative. But in all seriousness, we're very thankful for all of your help, and anything you can contribute will be much appreciated and will do us a lot of good. The more, the more we get, the better of the product will be. So remember, if you like The Gaggle and if you like Buddy, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.